What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to have a look at some transfer targets ahead of Game Week 3. What is up everyone, welcome back to another video. So as I did last week, my buy sell captain, after a little bit of feedback that I asked from you, and thank you for everyone that did reply, I've adapted it slightly and we're now going with a video called transfer targets that I think will run for the majority if not all of the upcoming season. It'll be out, as I said with the last one, Monday or Tuesday, just to get you starting to think about your teams, because a team selection video on Wednesday or Thursday, the majority of you may have already made your transfers or anything like that. So we're going to have a look at some of the most bought players ahead of the upcoming game week, so game week 3, some of the most sold players, and then as I did before, 3 key teams for you to discuss in FPL and some of the key players that you should be buying from them. So that's what we're going to cover in today's video. I hope you do enjoy it. Let's get into them. For anyone who is unaware, I'm actually on holiday this week, which is why the lighting and anything like that might seem a little bit different, but I've taken all my stuff with me and we'll be back in the usual setup from next week. But I had to get these videos out and that's why it's slightly different. So the most transferred in players, it's not just going to be the top 3, it's going to be 3 players that I think are worth talking about. So we've got Danny Ings here, who's had a price rise up to 8.1 million. Duffy, 4.1 million defender now, so he has again had a price rise. And finally Calvert-Lewin again had a price rise last week and again scored in game week 2. So if we start with Danny Ings, he has looked good. He scored in both game weeks 1 and game week 2. However, they do have a difficult run of fixtures coming from game week 4, and Aston Villa haven't looked quite at it in my opinion. I think there are better forwards that we could be looking at. If you own him, then playing him against Brentford at home in game week 3 is definitely worth keeping him for, but I probably wouldn't be buying Danny Ings at the moment. I know that there are good Aston Villa assets that we are looking at, but their fixture change from game week 4 just means I think there are better forwards elsewhere. Calvert-Lewin, for example, is a really good one that we could go with. Another one is Patrick Bamford, who did get an assist in game week 2 and has a nice run of fixtures coming up, and we may talk about Leeds in just a bit. But Ings seeing a price rise is fine. They do play Brentford in game week 3, but I'd be holding him if I had him, but I probably wouldn't be transferring him in ahead of game week 3. The next one is Shane Duffy. Now, Duffy went on loan last season up into the Scottish Premier League and has come back and seems to have refound his place in that Brighton defence. Now, with Lamptey out and Veltman out, he is starting for the time being. And when Veltman comes back, he could probably go in at right wing back, meaning that Duffy will keep his place in the team, but it isn't quite set in stone whether he'll keep his place in the team long term. However, I think given his first 2 performances this season in game week 1 and then game week 2 with the goal and a clean sheet, it's very hard for him to be dropped from that team given the form he's in. If you do have Tsimikas in your team or another 4.0 defender like Amati, who's unlikely to keep his place much longer, and you are looking for a cheap defender until you wildcard in potentially game weeks 5, game week 6, 7 or 8, then I think Duffy is a really nice option. Is it worth using a transfer on? Maybe not if you have Sanchez in goal, but I think he'll be starting for the foreseeable future. He does have really good goal threat from set pieces. He is really dominant in the air. So 4.1 million for him is definitely nice. And if he continues to get starts, that price will only increase and you'll hopefully get a bit of return in value. So I can see why he's one of the most transferred in players this game week. Next up and finally, we have Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So Everton really look good going forward. Not so good defensively, so the likes of Luca Dean I probably wouldn't be holding in your fantasy team, but Calvert-Lewin at 8.1 million, 14% owned, and a really nice run of fixtures to continue for the sort of first 8-10 game weeks of the season. He is definitely one I'm looking at transferring in. We'll look at who I'm getting out in just a minute, but Calvert-Lewin at that price seems to be on penalties as well. So a lot of us thinking that Richarlison might be on penalties for Everton or someone else, James Rodriguez if he was playing. Calvert-Lewin stepped up in game week 2 and scored it to a lot of surprise to us. So that makes him an even more appealing asset. That team at the moment just seems drilled to getting to Calvert-Lewin scoring goals. So definitely see him being transferred in over and over the next coming weeks. In terms of the most transferred out players, we've got Toney, White and Luca Dean in amongst the top transferred out players. So Ivan Toney, one of the most highly owned players going into the start of the season for Brentford, 27.8% owned, 6.5 million, and has blanked in the first 2 games and now has a few tricky fixtures coming up, including Aston Villa and Brighton in the next 2. I can see why he's being transferred out because a lot of the other highly owned assets have all done well. So a lot of us are looking at our teams and thinking, I don't quite know what transfer to make. So if you do have Toney and that is the situation, I don't think it's necessarily a fire that you need to put out. If you've got other things like defenders not playing on midfielders that you want to transfer, then I would do that before selling Toney. But if you're a bit like me, that you're looking at your team and there's nothing else that you would like to do, and you can upgrade Tony to Calvert-Lewin, for example, then I definitely think it is a transfer worth considering. He could definitely get returns in the next coming few, but that Brentford team don't look as focused on him as they did when they were in the Championship. Next up is Ben White of Arsenal. So he didn't play in game week 2 and conceded twice in game week 1. He seems to have had an illness, not quite confirmed exactly what it is, but as they've said, no symptoms. I think we can all imagine what's going on with Ben White at the moment. However, they do play Manchester City in game week 3, then it's the international break before Norwich at home in game week 4. If you've bought Ben White and you're selling him after those first 3 ahead of game week 4 when they play Norwich, I don't quite understand why he was owned in the first place. He should be back for that game week 4 fixture. I own him in my team and I'm keeping him ahead of that game week 4 fixture and game week 5 where they play Crystal Palace. Next up and finally, another defender is Luca Dean. So as I mentioned about Calvert-Lewin being one of the most transferred in players, his Everton teammate Luca Dean is on the most transferred out list. 5.5 million, 16.7% owned. There have been so many good defenders like Duffy that we spoke about for a cheaper price that are getting good returns. Luca Dean has returned a total of 2 points so far this season from game weeks 1 and game week 2, and their fixtures are okay, but I don't see that many clean sheets coming for Everton. So if you do own him, as I said, I don't think he's a fire that you need to put out, but if you don't have other transfers that you particularly want to be using, then he is a player that I would look to sell, and there are other options at a cheaper price that we might talk about that could get you as many returns, if not more. Moving on to the 3 key teams for FPL. So I put this post out. Thank you to everyone who replied. Every Monday I'll put a post out on my YouTube where any of you can go and comment which teams you'd like me to discuss, and I will take this on board when picking the 3 teams that we're going to go through. So remember that for the beginning every week so we can make sure we're targeting the teams that you guys want to have discussed. So the first team we're going to talk about that a lot of you mentioned, and definitely a team I already had on my radar, is Chelsea. Joint top of the Premier League with Liverpool at the moment, scoring 5 goals and conceding 2 with 2 clean sheets. Now, Lukaku came straight into the team and we'll talk about him. Mason Mount with 2 assists so far, and then Reece James, the standout performer from game week 2. The upcoming fixtures aren't as nice as we potentially hope, with Liverpool, Aston Villa, Tottenham and Manchester City in the next 4. However, from game week 7 there is an incredible fixture swing with Southampton and Brentford, followed by plenty of other nice fixtures that we should be definitely considering some of these Chelsea assets either now or in the very near future as well. Lukaku showed a focal point in the attack that Chelsea haven't really had over the past couple of seasons. Werner, Havertz have been playing there a little bit last year, but having Lukaku there, they had a focal point and he looks like he could score a lot of goals this season. He is 11.5 million, so given the next 4 fixtures, I probably wouldn't be scrambling to get him in. He can score goals against all of these teams, but maybe not as explosive as he could be against the likes of Southampton and Brentford. So I would keep keeping an eye on him for the next couple of weeks, but he is a player that I will definitely be considering bringing him in from game week 7 onwards. Mason Mount, 7.5 million, seems to be on set pieces, has got 2 assists so far. He's just a good option. He will tick along. He's maybe not the most explosive player, but he will get those sort of 4, 5, 6 point returns most weeks for you if we do keep clean sheets, and then there are those attacking returns to go on top of it. He's a nice option. He'll tick along. Maybe he's a long-term pick, and if you're looking for a short explosive player, someone like Jota, someone like Mason Greenwood may be a better option. But if Chelsea are going to go far in the Premier League this season, Mason Mount will start a lot of games and will likely get attacking returns to go with it. But one of the most popular talking points about Chelsea is their defence and how good they've been defensively since Thomas Tuchel came over. Now, Reece James is the one we've got in here, given that he scored and got an assist with an 18-point return in game week 2. But there are others worth talking about. Now, at left back between Chilwell and Alonso, given that Chilwell has started the season on the bench and Alonso has played quite well, there is a bit of doubt about who will be starting at left back. Now, at centre back, I think Azpilicueta, Christensen, Rudiger and Thiago Silva will rotate most of the games between the 4 of them. But Rudiger and Azpilicueta, I think, will be the more nailed out of those 2. So if I was looking for a Chelsea defender, I'd either go for Reece James on the right-hand side, or I'd go for probably Azpilicueta or Rudiger in the 2 centre-back positions. Now, when game week 7 comes around, I will likely have a Chelsea triple up, which will include 2 defenders, and I'll go for 1 more attacking like Reece James and 1 that I know will start every week so we can get those clean sheets when they do come in like Rudiger. So that would be a combination I'd go with, but Mason Mount and Lukaku on top of that would definitely make a nice option. But given the first 2 performances, even the next 4 fixtures, it is worth considering bringing Chelsea players into your team, and Lukaku and Reece James are also some of the most bought transfers this game week. Next up, we spoke a little bit about them last week, is Tottenham, but they're in here again. So they won 1-0 in game week 2, actually quite fortunate to get 3 points out of that game given how strong Wolves were. Son was an interesting one. A lot of people looked to bring him in to their teams ahead of game week 2. He did blank, but he had a lot of chances before getting subbed in 75 minutes for the return of Harry Kane. Now, 12.5 million for Harry Kane when we don't quite know if he's back to full fitness and ready to start, whether he'll be at Tottenham, whether it's Manchester City, means it's just too much to be investing in him. But Son at 10 million, whether he's playing up front or out wide if Kane comes back into the starting team, I think he's a really nice option. However, it was Dele Alli that took the limelight when he took the penalty off Son. We all thought Son would be on penalties without Harry Kane, but Dele Alli got it, scored the goal as well, and now at 6.5 million, with the next 2 fixtures being Watford at home and Crystal Palace away, having the Tottenham penalty taker for that, and he's looked very good in pre-season as well, could be a real steal. So there are a lot of us looking at our teams thinking, I can't afford Son, I have to do so much to get Son into my team. I think Dele Alli could be a really nice cheap option that you can maybe sell. Jota, if you've got Greenwood, depending on whether his minutes are going to be sustainable, whether you've got Rafinha, Ben Rama, you're not wanting to keep those players, or you've got Harvey Barnes, for example, a big player that people are transferring out, Harvey Barnes, Dele Alli could be a really nice option for the next couple of weeks. And another thing about Tottenham, they've kept 2 clean sheets in their first 2 games. So Reguilon is the defender that I would definitely be calling out. Now, Tanganga on the right-hand side seems to be the one starting at the moment, but there is chance of a little bit of rotation on that hand side. But the attacking threat that Reguilon brings at 5 million is definitely the option I'd go with. Watford at home, Crystal Palace away in the next 2. Then it is Chelsea and Arsenal, but Aston Villa and Newcastle. And given their good clean sheets in the first 2 game weeks, I think it's a really nice differential you can go with. If you've got the likes of Luka Dean that we spoke about, or Ben White, and you've got a little bit of money elsewhere to bring in for that defender, Reguilon is definitely one I'd be looking at, and I think Tottenham could have a couple of good games on the horizon, as well as along their next 6 to get some really good points and be some really good differential assets. If you don't go for Son, then a lot of their other players are not highly owned at all. So Tottenham are definitely a team on my radar. I don't own any, and I don't know how I'll quite get one into my team, but definitely a team that you guys should consider bringing in. And the final one we're going to talk about is Leeds. So they were very disappointing in game week 1, losing 5-1. Now they did draw 2-2 to Everton in game week 2. Now, from a defensive point of view, it may be worth holding off. Although if we look at their fixtures for the next 6, Burnley away, Newcastle away, West Ham at home, Watford at home, and Southampton away, with that Liverpool fixture in there as well. So given that they were much stronger at home defensively last season, it may be worth waiting until that sort of West Ham and Watford fixture before going in for their defenders if you don't own one already. If you own Ayling, or your own Firpo, or your own Cooper, or any of the centre backs, then just hold them. You can play them against Burnley, you can play them against Newcastle, but it is definitely the attackers that are getting much more attention. So Rafinha at 6.5 million, you've got Harrison in at 6 million, and Bamford in at 8 million are definitely assets worth considering. They did score 2, they've scored 3 goals so far, and we can see with these upcoming fixtures there are definitely goals for this Leeds side. Rafinha scored in game week 2, with Bamford getting his assist, and those 2 are probably the 2 that I would recommend going with over the likes of Rodrigo or Harrison or Dallas or Klitsch, who have all got returns as well. Rafinha at 6.5 million as a midfielder, it just seems like such a steal. And Bamford at 8 million, when their fixtures turn from I think game week 5, then that's when I'll be looking to bring him in. Potentially when Danny Ings' fixtures go a bit more difficult, when Ivan Toney may need to go for my team. Patrick Bamford along with Dominic Calvert-Lewin are definitely the 2 forwards that I'd go with on top of having Rafinha in my midfield. They just seem like such a good price, and we know how many goals Leeds can score. So those are some of the most transferred in and out players ahead of Game Week 3, as well as 3 teams that I think are worth looking at, both from an attacking point of view and from a defensive point of view, different assets from all of those teams as well. So I hope you have enjoyed. Team selection and all of that will be out later in the week on Wednesday or Thursday, but if you have enjoyed, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. These videos will be back every week, as well as a lot more to help you get the best rank you possibly can in this FPL season. So that's all we've got time for. If you have enjoyed, like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all very soon.